5 days after my dad told me I'd never be good enough, he announced my sister's big promotion on Facebook without mentioning me once. Then he called, demanding I send $1,500 for her celebration. I told him, I don't fund your favorites. That night, I did something I swore I never would. Hi Reddit. I'm Jordan, 34, and I want to share what's been going on with my family lately. It's been a mix of old wounds reopening and new frustrations boiling over, the kind of situation where you keep telling yourself you're over it, only to realize you never really were. I come from a family where favoritism wasn't subtle. If you ask my dad, Harold, he'd probably deny it, but the truth was obvious to everyone around us. My younger sister, Marissa, has always been the golden child. She's 28, sharp, ambitious, and somehow managed to tick every box Dad ever wanted. I, on the other hand, was the one who could never quite measure up, no matter what I did. I've tried to brush it off for years, convinced that maybe Dad just had high expectations or that my achievements weren't in the spotlight enough. But last week, it all became painfully clear. It was a typical Thursday night. Mom cooked dinner, and Dad, Marissa, and I sat around the table. We weren't close, not really. We'd never been the family that sat around sharing every detail of their lives. It was more like a formality, a weekly check-in where everyone was physically present but emotionally checked out. That night, the conversation was awkward, as usual. Dad was quiet, more reserved than normal. I figured he was tired. Then, as I was telling Marissa about a new project at work, something I'd been excited about for weeks, Dad cut in, his voice sharp and cold. You'll never be good enough, Jordan. You just don't get it. He didn't say it like it was a joke or a casual comment. No, it was like a verdict, delivered in front of Mom and Marissa, but no one said a word. I felt my face flush, my hands tense. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to say something, anything, but I didn't. Part of me wanted to scream, but another part just wanted to disappear. Marissa looked at me with that weird half-smile, like she knew this was a routine for Dad and was almost enjoying the moment. Mom quickly changed the subject, and we finished dinner in silence. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of notifications on my phone. Dad had posted a long message on Facebook, celebrating Marissa's big promotion. She'd been promoted to senior director at her firm, something she'd worked hard for, no doubt. But the way Dad wrote it, it felt like the entire world was supposed to bow down and celebrate her while I was invisible. There was a picture of Marissa, holding a glass of champagne, with the biggest smile you could imagine. Dad's post was full of praise, calling her brilliant, dedicated, and a shining example of what hard work can achieve. It was genuine in parts, but mostly it felt like a public declaration of her being the favorite. What stung the most was that there wasn't a single mention of me. No congratulations, no acknowledgement that I existed. Just a big, shining spotlight on Marissa. I sat there scrolling through the comments, friends and relatives all chiming in, congratulating her, asking when the party would be. And I realized, even in the eyes of our family and friends, I was the forgotten child. Later that evening, my phone rang. It was Dad. Jordan, he said, with that same tone he uses when he's making a demand. We're throwing a celebration party for Marissa's promotion. It's going to be at that hall downtown, the one with the chandeliers. I'm expecting you to help cover the cost. $1,500 should cover your share. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me to pay for her party? I asked, voice tight. Yes. She deserves the best, and it's a family thing. You're part of this family, so you're responsible. I took a deep breath. Dad, I don't fund your favorites. There was a long silence. Then his voice dropped lower, harsher. You owe her that much, Jordan. Don't forget it. I hung up before he could say anything else. I spent the rest of the night turning over every word, every memory with Dad. The times he made me feel like I was always one step behind, the way he ignored my successes, the way he lavished attention and resources on Marissa as if she was the only child who mattered. I'm not naive. I know Marissa has worked hard and earned her promotion, but I also know this isn't about merit or fairness. It's about control and favoritism, and Dad's inability to see me as anything other than a disappointment. Something inside me shifted that night. I swore I wouldn't let this pattern continue, that I'd stand up for myself, even if it meant breaking some unspoken family rules. But that's when I did something I swore I never would. Something that could either change everything or blow the whole family apart. That night, after hanging up with Dad, I sat alone in my apartment long after the lights were off. The silence was loud, louder than any argument or outburst. I kept replaying his words. You'll never be good enough. And then the demand for money to celebrate my sister like she was some untouchable queen. I was angry, yes, but mostly I felt exhausted. It wasn't just about the money or the party. It was about years of feeling invisible, dismissed, and outright rejected by my own family. The kind of rejection that cuts deeper than any harsh word, because it's slow, steady, and constant. Dad was always a complicated man. He worked hard, at least that's what everyone says, but his love always came with strings attached. When I was a kid, I remember trying so hard to impress him. Good grades, sports, music lessons, even college scholarships. But none of it ever seemed to be enough. Marissa? She breezed through childhood like a breeze. Dad loved showing her off. She was the daughter who could do no wrong, the one who could walk on water, at least in his eyes. I don't blame Marissa. She was a kid, just trying to live her life. But Dad? He made it clear from the start that she was his success story, and I was just the other kid. Every achievement I had was either dismissed or ignored. When I landed a decent job right out of college, Dad barely glanced up. But when Marissa got a summer internship, Dad announced it to every family member and friend like it was a national holiday. Mom? She was different. She loved both of us, but she rarely stepped in when Dad got like this. Sometimes I think she just didn't know how to fight him, or maybe she thought this was just the way things had to be. At the dinner where Dad said I'd never be good enough, Mom's eyes flickered with sadness, but she didn't say a word. I later learned she felt trapped, like she couldn't intervene without making things worse. This left me stuck between two people who should have been my biggest supporters, but somehow weren't. 2 days after the call, I got a formal invitation in the mail for Marissa's promotion party. It was lavish, gold foil lettering on heavy cardstock, a reservation at an upscale venue with live music, fancy catering, and an open bar. I stared at it for a long time, my stomach twisting. I realized that Dad was using this party as a way to showcase Marissa's success to everyone, their friends, their colleagues, the neighbors who had watched us grow up. It was a public spectacle, a trophy display, and I was expected to pay for it. I wasn't just angry anymore. I felt manipulated. The next day, I called Dad back. Dad, I said carefully, I'm not sending you any money for the party. There was a long pause, then his voice turned cold, sharper than before. That's disappointing, Jordan. I thought you'd do the right thing for your sister. I am doing the right thing. I'm not going to bankroll a party where I'm not even acknowledged. Maybe you're not the right son after all. I could hear the unspoken threat behind that line. The suggestion that if I didn't play by his rules, I'd be cut out completely. I told him, I'm done playing your game. I debated whether to talk to Marissa about this. We'd never been close, but I thought maybe she'd understand. After all, she's had her own struggles. But when I brought it up, she didn't just brush it off. She accused me of being selfish. Dad's working so hard to make the celebration perfect. You should be happy for me, Jordan, she said with a tight smile. I am happy for you, I replied. But I'm not happy with Dad's behavior, or with being expected to pay for it when I'm treated like I don't matter. Marissa's eyes narrowed. You just don't get it. You never have. It was clear. She wasn't on my side. At least, not in this. Later that evening, as I was trying to clear my head, I got a message on my phone from an unknown number. Jordan, this is Mark. I'm Dad's accountant. We're trying to get everyone's contributions for the party finalized by Friday. Please let us know if you're sending your share. I stared at the screen, incredulous. Even Dad's accountant was involved in this? It felt like a corporate takeover of what should have been a family event. I typed back, not contributing. Please tell your client. That night, I made a decision that surprised even me. I started digging through some old family financial documents I'd found while clearing out Mom's attic last year. I never really paid attention to them before, but now I was looking for anything that could give me some leverage or at least some clarity. What I found made my jaw drop. There were records of money flowing from Dad's accounts, large sums, to businesses and investments I'd never heard of. And then there were personal expenses, luxury vacations, a new car for Marissa, expensive gifts with no receipts or explanations. But then, buried in the files, was something else. Something I wasn't expecting. A letter from a lawyer outlining a new will draft that left almost everything to Marissa, with barely a mention of me. That was the moment everything changed. After finding that will draft, I spent the next few days in a fog. It felt like I had uncovered a secret world beneath the surface of my family, one that was built on exclusion and control, not love or fairness. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus at work. Every time I thought about calling Dad or even Marissa, my chest tightened with anxiety. The whole thing felt like a trap, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to step into it or run the other way. One afternoon, I met Mom for coffee. I needed someone to talk to, someone who might have answers or at least some sympathy. She looked tired, more than usual, like the weight of the family was pressing down on her too. When I brought up the will, her face went pale. She sighed deeply and said, "Jordan, your father has been planning this for years. He's always believed Marissa was the one who would carry the family name forward, who would make a mark." I shook my head. But what about me? Am I just supposed to disappear? Mom hesitated, then quietly admitted, "He's never wanted to see it that way. You were always difficult for him to understand. You don't fit the mold he imagined." That hurt more than I expected. Meanwhile, Dad's messages became more frequent and less subtle. He started sending texts reminding me of the family obligations, of how important it was to support Marissa publicly and privately. When I ignored them, he called multiple times a day, sometimes leaving voicemails filled with thinly veiled disappointment. At one point, he even sent me a group message with extended family and close friends copied in, asking why I hadn't contributed to the party fund yet. I felt exposed, humiliated. The pressure wasn't just about money anymore. It was about maintaining appearances. Dad wanted the perfect family image on Facebook, at the party, in every conversation. And that was the inconvenient truth he was desperate to hide. I reached out to Marissa again, hoping maybe things could be different now that the will was out in the open. Instead, she sent back a curt reply. "Dad's right about you, Jordan. You don't understand how hard this has been for him, for me. Maybe if you weren't so focused on yourself, you'd see that." It was like she had become a defender of the very thing that was hurting me the most. It felt like betrayal, but I also realized she was trapped in her own way, trying to hold onto the favor Dad had given her, no matter what it cost. The celebration was less than a week away, and the tension in the family was unbearable. Dad was increasingly distant with me, cold in his texts, and Marissa was busy with party plans that excluded me entirely. I got a call from the event planner, who had been copied in by Dad, asking if I wanted to RSVP or send a gift. I told her no. The planner sounded taken aback but polite. It was clear Dad was using every tool at his disposal to pressure me into compliance, and I was standing firm, but barely. One night, lying awake, I thought about the person I wanted to be in all of this. The kid who desperately wanted to belong and be loved by his family, or the adult who refused to be sidelined, ignored, and controlled any longer. I made a choice. I was going to confront this head-on, not just for myself, but to expose the whole unfair, toxic dynamic. But that would mean risking everything: family gatherings, relationships, and maybe even my peace of mind. The days before the party crawled by like molasses. Every notification on my phone set my nerves on edge. I knew Dad was watching, waiting for me to give in, to send the money, to fall back into the pattern where I was the obedient son paying for his sister's spotlight. But I didn't. Instead, I began quietly planning. I started by gathering more evidence, not just the will draft, but everything I could find in the financial records Dad left lying around. Hidden transfers, receipts for extravagant gifts, even payments to a company that seemed to be registered under Marissa's name but was really controlled by Dad. It was a web of money moving behind the scenes, showing how Dad funneled his wealth and attention exclusively to her. I scanned the documents, made copies, and backed them up securely. This was going to be my leverage, my insurance. I also quietly reached out to a family lawyer. I wasn't sure I wanted to start a legal battle, but I needed advice, someone impartial who could explain what these documents meant and what my rights were. On the night of the party, while the family and friends gathered in that grand hall downtown, I stayed home. I didn't send a gift, I didn't attend, and I certainly didn't send a dime. Instead, I did something else. I sent a carefully worded email, not just to Dad, but to the extended family, Marissa's colleagues, and a few close family friends. In it, I laid out what I'd found, the will favoring Marissa, the financial trails, and most importantly, Dad's pattern of favoritism that had left me and others invisible and unsupported for years. I framed it carefully, no accusations, just facts, questions about fairness, and a call for transparency. I hit send, heart pounding, knowing there was no going back. The reactions were swift. Some relatives responded with shock, others with anger, mostly directed at me for airing dirty laundry. Marissa called me furious, accusing me of betrayal. Dad, predictably, was silent at first, but the tension was palpable. In the days that followed, whispers and awkward conversations spread through the family. Invitations were rescinded. Messages went unanswered. The perfect family image Dad had curated was cracking. But for the first time, I felt a strange relief. The truth was out, messy and raw. After sending that email, my phone didn't stop buzzing for hours. At first, I didn't have the nerve to read any of the responses. I just sat on my couch, motionless, staring at the dim glow of my screen like it might catch fire. It was strange. For so many years, I had been waiting to be heard. Now that I finally was, the silence in my apartment was deafening. I kept expecting to feel triumphant, but instead, I felt something closer to grief, as though I had just buried the last illusion I had about my family. Eventually, I worked up the courage to read the messages. They fell into 3 groups. The first group was quiet support, a few cousins and an aunt who reached out privately to say they understood, that they had seen the favoritism too, even if they'd never said anything before. One cousin, Eleanor, wrote, "I always wondered why your dad treated you like a distant cousin at reunions while Marissa got a welcome parade. I'm sorry it took this long for someone to speak up." The second group was silence. A thick, telling silence. These were the people who didn't want to pick sides. The ones who liked their holiday dinners peaceful and their social media photos tidy. I didn't blame them, but I didn't respect their neutrality either. And then there was the third group, the defenders. They came in fast and loud. One of Dad's old friends emailed me back a short message that read, "I don't know what your goal is, but I suggest you think hard before destroying your own family." As if the family hadn't been quietly unraveling for years. 2 days after the party, Marissa posted a long message on her social media page. It started like this: "When people are jealous, they'll say anything to tear others down. I've worked hard for everything I've accomplished, and I won't let bitterness dim the joy of this moment." There was no mention of me by name, but she didn't need to. The message was clear. I was being framed as the bitter, ungrateful sibling trying to ruin her big day. Her friends flooded the comments with words like, "So proud of you," "Don't listen to the haters," and "You're a star." A few family members even chimed in with supportive notes. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. A few nights later, Mom called me. I could hear the exhaustion in her voice before she even said hello. "Jordan," she said gently, "I got your email." Her pause after that was so long, I thought the call had dropped. "I should have done something sooner," she said finally. "Your father, he's always been a strong personality. He knows how to make people feel small when they don't fall in line." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to be angry with her for not defending me sooner, for not challenging Dad, but I also knew she lived under his shadow, too. "You saw the will?" I asked quietly. "I did," she said. "It's real. He had it drawn up last spring. He told me it was to protect the family legacy. When I asked about you, he said, Jordan will be fine. He doesn't need anything. Like you were a stranger." She sounded close to tears. I never agreed with it, but I was afraid of what would happen if I pushed. That was the first time I heard regret in her voice. Real, heavy regret. In the weeks that followed, the family didn't implode, but it cracked. Subtle shifts began to happen. One of my uncles, Dad's younger brother, Graham, called me out of the blue. We hadn't spoken in years. He said, "Your dad's pride has always been a problem." But I had no idea it had gone this far. We talked for an hour. He told me stories from their childhood, how Dad had always been competitive, even with his own siblings. Graham said, "You're not the first person he's tried to push out of the circle." It was strange hearing that. For so long, I thought I was alone in this, the black sheep, the outsider. But now, I was realizing that maybe Dad had always been the one building walls. Then, one afternoon, I got a thick envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter from Dad. It wasn't an apology. It was a lecture. He wrote, "You've made your choice, Jordan. I hope it brings you peace, because it's brought embarrassment to this family. I built everything we have with hard work and sacrifice, and it's not yours to destroy." Then, at the bottom, in smaller, sharper writing, "Do not contact me further. I will be updating the will to reflect this decision." There it was, the threat, the line drawn in ink. And still, I felt calm, because something had shifted. The roles had changed. I was no longer begging to be seen. I wasn't the quiet, agreeable son hoping for crumbs of approval. I had pulled back the curtain, and Dad didn't like being seen for what he was. I wasn't done yet. If Dad was going to dig in, so was I. I gathered everything I had, the financial documents, the emails, the copies of the will drafts, and met again with the lawyer I had spoken to earlier. We went through everything carefully, building a timeline of decisions and patterns. Not for a lawsuit, not yet, but for clarity. The lawyer said something that stuck with me. Even if you never challenge this formally, documenting the truth is a kind of power. Most people in your position never do. And I realized he was right. I wasn't doing this to win a courtroom battle. I was doing this so I could finally say, without doubt or apology, that what had happened was real and wrong. A week after Dad's letter, I got a text from Marissa. It was brief. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a while, unsure what to do. My first instinct was to ignore her. After everything, the years of one-sided favoritism, the public post defending Dad, the coldness, she wanted to talk now? But something in me was curious. Maybe I just wanted to see if she'd finally admit what had been happening. Maybe I wanted closure. We met at a park near our old high school. It was quiet, shaded by tall maples, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down. Marissa looked different. Tired, thinner than I remembered. She didn't waste time. "I read everything," she said. "The will, the documents, the email you sent." I didn't believe it at first, but "It's all true, isn't it?" I nodded. "It is." She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together like she used to when we were kids, and she was nervous. "I don't know how I didn't see it," she whispered. "Or maybe I did. I just didn't want to. I thought I had to protect what I'd earned. But now I see. Dad wasn't protecting me. He was using me." It was the first time she'd ever acknowledged the imbalance between us. I didn't say anything. I let her talk. "He's angry with me now," she continued. "After the party, people started asking questions. He blamed me for not shutting you down. Said I let it get out of control. Then he cut off the business funding he promised me. Said I'd lost my position. That surprised me. I hadn't expected Dad to turn on her. But of course he had. His love was never love, it was leverage. "I'm sorry, Jordan," she said, finally looking up at me. "I was awful to you. I let him pit us against each other. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say it." And for the first time in years, I saw the girl I remembered, not the polished adult Dad had molded, but the sister I used to build forts with in the backyard. "I believe you," I said. "But that doesn't mean I'm ready to pretend everything's fine." "I know," she said, "but maybe someday." After that conversation, things began to shift. Quietly, but noticeably. Word spread through the family. Not quickly and not loudly, but steadily. Some relatives, the ones who had dismissed me at first, began to check in. I got a letter from Aunt Helen apologizing for not believing me. An invitation to a cousin's graduation. It was like I had re-entered the family, not because I demanded it, but because I had forced everyone to see the truth. Dad, on the other hand, went quieter. Publicly, he maintained his stance. He told people I had misunderstood the will, that the situation had been blown out of proportion. But privately, his support eroded. The trust he once held over the family began to crack. Not dramatically. Just little by little. He stopped being the man everyone looked to for approval. And that, I think, was the real beginning of the end of his control. I haven't spoken to Dad since his letter. We're not estranged exactly, just disconnected. I send him a card on holidays, and he sometimes responds with a short, polite note. We exist at a distance, and for now, I'm okay with that. Marissa and I are rebuilding, slowly. We talk now, not often, but honestly. She left the business Dad set up for her and started her own venture. She says it feels good to build something on her own terms. As for me, I'm okay. Really okay. I didn't win in a dramatic way. I wasn't handed anything. But I found something more important, clarity. I saw the truth, named it, and stood by it, even when no one wanted to hear it. And over time, that truth made room for something new. Not reconciliation with everyone. Not a perfect ending. But peace. Real peace. And that, more than any inheritance, was what I needed most.